It began on a cold autumn evening when Eli Grant pressed his small face against the glowing window of Barlow's Toy Emporium. His reflection stared back, greedy, wide-eyed, almost trembling with want. Rows of toys sparkled behind the glass like treasures from another world. Soldiers' trains, dolls, and a wooden soldier that seemed to breathe. When Mr. Barlow's pale hand placed that toy in the window, Eli felt something twist inside him. He wanted it. More than air, more than warmth. But as he stepped inside, the shopkeeper's voice slithered through the air. "Some toys don't belong to everyone, boy. What happens when a lie becomes the only truth you live in? Is wealth worth losing your soul or your peace?" Eli's hand trembled as he reached for the soldier, and his reflection didn't move with him. That night, Eli could barely breathe for excitement. He placed the soldier on his nightstand, whispering that it was finally his. His mother, Martha, peeked into the room, smiling weakly at the pile of toys stacked like a castle. "You'll have no space left soon," she said softly. But Eli ignored her, his eyes fixed on Tabay, whose carved grin seemed to deepen under the moonlight. Outside, a branch scraped against the window, and Eli swore he heard a whisper. "Don't steal what isn't given." He turned, heart pounding. The toy hadn't moved, but its shadow had. Morning sunlight spilled through the window, warming the piles of toys. But Tabay was gone. Eli tore apart his room, throwing dolls, cars, and puzzles onto the floor. His mother rushed in, shocked by his panic. "Eli, what's wrong?" He shouted that someone had taken his soldier. Martha searched gently but found nothing. The air felt heavier. For the first time, Eli didn't feel powerful among his toys. He felt watched. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of a ticking clock grew louder, as if mocking his loss. By afternoon, Eli sat in silence, staring at the empty nightstand. The toys around him seemed dull, lifeless. He whispered Tabay's name again, but the air didn't answer. Then a faint tapping echoed from inside his toy chest. When he opened it, the toys were all facing upward, their painted eyes fixed on him. His heart thudded painfully. He backed away, trembling. The chest lid closed slowly by itself. Something unseen whispered near his ear. "Eli always calls its death." That night, Eli dreamed of the toy shop again. Only this time, it was dark, shelves empty, air thick with dust. Mr. Barlow stood in the corner, his grin stretching unnaturally. "You took what wasn't yours, boy," he rapped. Eli reached out, begging, but the wooden soldier stood between them. Alive now, blue eyes glowing like lanterns. "Give it back," the toy said. Eli woke up screaming. On his pillow lay a single wooden button, the one missing from Tabay's coat. Morning brought no comfort. Eli sat at breakfast, eyes hollow, spoon untouched. Martha's voice trembled as she tried to make him smile, but the boy only stared at the wooden button he'd found on his pillow. When she asked where it came from, Eli lied, said it fell from another toy. She didn't press him, though her glance lingered too long. The air between them felt fragile, filled with something unsaid. Beneath the table, Eli's foot tapped restlessly. He could almost hear a ticking sound again, faint but constant, like a heartbeat trapped in wood. After school, Eli returned home in silence. His friends had laughed, called him Toy Prince, but their laughter felt sharp. He climbed the stairs, shut his door, and found all his toys turned, facing the wall. The sight froze him. He stepped closer, whispering their names like they were friends who'd abandoned him. Then, one toy rolled off the shelf, a small red car, and stopped at his feet. Something unseen had moved it. The ticking returned, louder now, crawling through the air like invisible fingers. That evening, Martha found him sitting on the floor, whispering to his toys. She knelt beside him and asked softly, "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" Eli didn't answer. He stared at the wall, eyes distant. "They're angry," he murmured. Martha reached to touch his shoulder, but he jerked away, shouting for her to stop. His breath quickened. Then in the quiet that followed, the faint sound of marching echoed from his toy chest. Slow, deliberate, like wooden boots on a floor. That night Eli couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house sounded alive. He sat up, clutching his blanket, and stared at the toy chest. The ticking was louder now, clearer, until it formed into a pattern, a rhythm like footsteps circling his bed. The air grew cold. "Tobey," he whispered. A soft wooden knock answered from inside the chest. Eli crawled closer, heart racing. When he lifted the lid, only darkness stared back. But the lid slammed shut by itself, grazing his fingers. He screamed. When Martha burst into the room, Eli sat trembling on the floor, his hand bleeding slightly from the chest's edge. "It slammed on its own," he cried. She held him tightly, whispering soothing words, though fear flickered behind her calm voice. After tucking him in, she returned to close the toy chest. But as she bent down, she froze. There, half buried among the toys, lay a small tag carved in wood. "Property of Barlow's Emporium." The clock struck midnight. A faint whisper drifted through the room. "Return what was stolen." Martha couldn't shake the chill from her spine. The next morning she walked Eli to school, holding his small hand tighter than usual. He looked pale, his eyes sunken from sleeplessness. "Mom, can toys get angry?" he asked suddenly. She hesitated, smiling weakly, but couldn't answer. As Eli disappeared into the school gates, Martha looked down at her palm. She'd brought the wooden tag with her. It felt warm, as though alive. On its back, faint letters began to appear. "Return what was stolen before nightfall." At school, Eli couldn't focus. The ticking sound haunted him, following him from the classroom to the playground. When he opened his backpack at recess, the wooden button lay on top of his lunchbox, though he'd left it on his dresser. The button pulsed faintly with warmth. His friend, Noah, tried to grab it, but Eli shouted for him not to touch it. The other kids laughed, calling him weird. Eli stuffed the button into his pocket, heart pounding, and for just a moment, he thought he heard tiny wooden boots marching inside his bag. When Martha returned home alone, she went straight to Eli's room. The air was colder than before. She knelt before the toy chest again, whispering, "What are you?" The lid creaked open by itself, revealing toys perfectly arranged, except one space, clearly meant for the wooden soldier. The tag she held slipped from her fingers and landed inside. For an instant, she saw the reflection of Mr. Barlow in the polished wood, standing behind her, though when she turned, no one was there. Only the faint smell of sawdust filled the air. That evening, Eli returned home shaken. He begged his mother not to make him go to bed. "He's coming back," he whispered. Martha tried to calm him, but the fear in his voice pierced her heart. She lit a small lamp beside his bed and promised to stay until he fell asleep. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the lamp. Then, knock, knock, knock. The sound came from downstairs, steady and deliberate. Martha rose slowly, every instinct warning her not to go. Eli whispered, "Don't open the door." Martha descended the stairs, her heart hammering. The knocking grew louder, echoing like wooden fists. When she reached the front door, it stopped. Silence. She turned the knob slowly and found a small box on the porch, wrapped in old newspaper from Barlow's Emporium. Her trembling hands unwrapped it. Inside lay the wooden soldier, Toby, eyes open, face smile. Beneath it, a note written in spidery ink. "He belongs to me. So does what's missing from you." Behind her, Eli's voice called out weakly, "Mom, I can't move my hand." Eli's right hand hung motionless the next morning, cold to the touch. Martha wrapped it in a blanket, tears trembling in her eyes. She called the doctor, but the phone line only crackled with static. Eli sat quietly, staring at Tobey now placed on the kitchen table. He's not a toy," Eli whispered. "He's waiting. Martha wanted to believe it was all in his mind, but when Tobey's wooden head tilted slightly toward them, she froze. Outside, a storm began to build, thunder rolling like distant drums. By noon, the house felt alive with whispers. Martha followed faint footsteps upstairs, each one sounding heavier than a child's. She pushed open Eli's door. The toy chest stood open, and all his toys now faced the bed. In the center lay Tobey, standing upright on its own. Eli sat cross-legged on the bed, whispering, "He wants to go home." Martha trembled. "Then we'll take him back." The soldier's painted eyes seemed to flicker brighter, as if it understood. Thunder cracked, shaking the room. The storm raged as Martha drove through the rain, the car headlights slicing through sheets of water. Eli clutched Toby tightly on his lap, whispering apologies to it between sobs. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have taken you." The toy's eyes reflected the streetlights, glowing faintly blue. Martha's hands shook on the steering wheel. When they passed the crooked sign of Barlow's Emporium, the lights of the shop flickered on by themselves. "We'll fix this," she whispered. But as the car stopped, Eli's limp hand twitched. Once, sharply, as if something inside it woke. The toy shop door creaked open on its own. Inside, the lights burned dimly, flickering like candles. Mr. Barlow stood behind the counter exactly as Eli remembered. Same smile, same hollow eyes. "I told you, child," he said softly. "Toys that are taken, take something in return." Martha stepped forward, holding Eli protectively. "Take it back then." "Let him go." Mr. Barlow's grin widened. "I cannot. Only he can give it back. The truth he stole." Eli's voice trembled. He lied. "I said I bought it, but I didn't." Mr. Barlow leaned closer, whispering, "Then return it with truth." Eli placed Toby on the counter, his small body trembling. "I stole you," he said, tears falling onto the soldier's face. "I'm sorry." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Tobey's wooden eyelids blinked once. A faint blue light rose from its chest and spread through the room, filling it with warmth. Eli's limp hand twitched, then slowly, miraculously moved. But as he looked up, Mr. Barlow was gone. Only his voice lingered. "One debt paid, but every greed leaves a shadow." Outside, the storm broke, rain turning soft. The drive home was quiet. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened, reflecting faint light like a trail of ghosts. Eli sat with his restored hand resting on his lap, fingers twitching slightly as though relearning movement. Martha glanced at him, tears silently sliding down her face. "It's over," she whispered. But Eli didn't answer. His eyes were on the horizon, where the shop's sign still flickered faintly behind them. "He said greed leaves a shadow," Eli murmured. Martha reached for his hand, gripping it tightly, afraid of what silence might still hold. Back home, the house smelled faintly of dust and rain. Eli walked into his room slowly, half expecting the toys to turn again, but they sat still, harmless, lifeless. He touched each one gently, whispering their names like apologies. When he reached the toy chest, he hesitated before opening it. Inside was nothing but emptiness, and at the bottom, the faint imprint of where Tobey once lay. For the first time, the silence felt peaceful. He smiled weakly, but when he turned to leave, a faint wooden knock came from inside the chest. Later that afternoon, Martha sat by the window watching Eli play outside. The sky had cleared, and autumn leaves drifted slowly from the trees. She smiled faintly, relief softening her tired face. Yet, as she looked closer, something in her chest tightened. Every time Eli moved, his shadow lagged slightly behind. It was subtle, almost invisible, but once seen, she couldn't unsee it. When he bent to pick up a toy car, his shadow stood still for a breath too long. Martha's lips parted, the color draining from her face. That evening, Martha tucked Eli into bed. "You're safe now," she whispered. He nodded sleepily, clutching his blanket. She turned off the lamp and stepped out, pausing at the doorway. For a moment, she thought she heard soft ticking again. Faint, rhythmic. She returned to look. Eli was asleep, his face peaceful. But the shadow on the wall wasn't still. It shifted slightly, moving its fingers long after his had stilled. Martha's heart raced. She closed the door slowly, whispering to herself, "He's just dreaming." But deep down, she wasn't sure. Midnight. The house was silent. A sudden clatter echoed from Eli's room, the sound of toys falling. Martha ran in, flicking on the light. The toy chest was open again, its lid slowly rising as though pushed from within. Eli sat up, eyes wide with terror. "Mom," he whispered. "He's still here." The soldier's voice, faint but clear, came from inside the chest. "A lie never truly dies. It only changes hands." The lamp flickered violently, then went out. Martha pulled Eli close, heart pounding in the dark as the ticking returned. Steady, patient, endless. The next morning, the house felt wrong, quieter than silence itself. Martha found Eli sitting at the table, staring at nothing. His eyes were dull, lips pale. When she touched his shoulder, he didn't react. Then he whispered, "He followed me out." Martha's breath caught. On the table beside him lay the wooden button again, though she'd thrown it away days ago. She dropped it in shock, and it rolled across the floor, spinning endlessly without stopping. As it spun, faint laughter echoed through the walls. The same hollow chuckle Mr. Barlow once made. By midday, shadows in the house began to stretch unnaturally. They crawled along walls, bending toward Eli wherever he went. Martha watched helplessly as he sat in the living room, whispering to someone unseen. "He says I owe him something else," Eli murmured, eyes unfocused. Martha's voice shook. "You've already given it back." Eli smiled weakly. "Not everything. I still wanted more." Then, for a heartbeat, the light bulbs flickered out. And when they flashed back on, Tobey stood upright on the floor again, his blue eyes glowing faintly. That night, Martha placed Tobey inside a box, sealing it shut with tape and rope. She carried it to the basement, locking it behind the old furnace. Eli stood at the top of the stairs, silent, watching. "He'll come back," he said softly. "You can't keep him away." Martha tried to steady her voice, telling him it was over, but when she turned to go, she saw movement behind the basement door, the handle twisting once, slowly. Her knees weakened. The rope around the box began to tighten on its own, creaking like a living thing. The night grew heavy with silence. Martha lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint ticking sound that had returned. Slow, rhythmic, deliberate. She rose and went to Eli's room. Panic clawed her chest as she followed the ticking downstairs. There, in the living room, Eli stood before the fireplace, holding Tobey in both hands. His face was calm. He said, "He wants a friend." Eli whispered, "So I'll give him one." He turned toward her, and his shadow didn't follow. It stood beside him, smiling. Martha lunged forward, grabbing Eli's shoulders. "Stop this!" she cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. Eli looked up at her, eyes glassy. "I can't. He says if I keep him, I'll never be alone." In the silence that followed, Tobey's head turned toward Martha by itself, creaking softly. The fire flared suddenly bright, illuminating Eli's terrified face. Martha snatched the toy and hurled it into the flames. It screamed, a hollow, splintering cry. The lights shattered, plunging the house into darkness. When the fire died, Tobey was gone, but the ticking continued, coming from Eli's chest. Dawn crept slowly through gray clouds. Martha found Eli curled on the couch, trembling in his sleep. She touched his chest and froze. Each heartbeat echoed with a faint wooden tick. His skin was pale, his breath shallow. On the floor, ashes from the burned toy glowed faintly blue, pulsing with the rhythm of his heart. "Please, God," she whispered, "take the toy, not my boy." For the first time in days, sunlight broke through the window, landing on Eli's face, and he stirred. "Mom, he's inside me now," he murmured. Determined, Martha wrapped Eli in a blanket and drove straight back to where Barlow's Emporium had stood. But when she arrived, the building was gone. Nothing but an empty lot and a burned foundation. Eli sat silently in the passenger seat, whispering numbers under his breath, the ticking from his chest matching each one. "We can't fix what doesn't exist," Martha whispered, gripping the wheel until her knuckles whitened. Eli looked up with hollow eyes. "He's not gone. He's waiting for me to finish wanting." That night, Martha lit candles around Eli's bed. "If he's inside you," she said softly, "then we'll drive him out." Eli's voice came from a place deeper than his own throat. "You can't drive away what you invited." His pupils flickered blue. The ticking grew louder. Martha began to pray, her voice trembling. Each word seemed to make the shadows shiver. Suddenly, Eli screamed. His body arched as a faint figure of light burst from his chest, the shape of a wooden soldier half-formed, twisting in agony. The light faded. Eli fell limp, breathing shallowly. The soldier's spirit hovered, half-transparent, its eyes softer now. Martha whispered, "Please, let him go." The figure turned its gaze on her, voice like cracking wood. "Greed births longing, longing births loss. Only truth frees both." Martha nodded, tears streaming. "Then take mine. Take my wish that he'd never want." The spirit dissolved, scattering into blue dust that drifted toward Eli. The ticking stopped. For the first time in weeks, silence felt alive again. When morning came, Eli opened his eyes. The ticking was gone. He looked at his mother and smiled faintly. "He's gone," he whispered. Martha held him close, sobbing quietly into his hair. As they embraced, sunlight filled the room, warm and golden. Yet in the corner beneath the toy chest, a single object remained. A wooden button, half-burned but unbroken. Its faint reflection caught the light before rolling slowly into shadow. Outside, the world was calm again. But in the quiet, one question lingered. What happens when a lie forgives itself?